It's Peter from americasmansman.wordpress.com. I want to talk about corporate schmuckiness, and specifically, I want to talk about this workplace sensitivity training. It's really workplace desensitivity, and by that I mean that it's really the purpose of it is to really get you to go against what's in your heart and what's in your gut. And if you work in an American workplace, and I'm kind of riffing off a Jordan Peterson lecture here, but basically going to keep it short because I know your time is limited. And thank you, by the way, for making an investment in these videos from America's Man's Man. It shows that you've got it together, or you're trying to get it together, and you're in the know. You're not woke in the sense that Pocahontas is trying to be woke, but you're legitimately trying to understand yourself and this crazy America that exists today and why it exists. And that's what the americasmansman.wordpress.com blog helps you do. So thank you for investing your time and for improving your own life and that and those of others around you. But you basically have these work. I mean, I understand it. It's subconscious anti-bias programming, or is what they call it sometimes, or anti-bias training, which is good because it's like, well, gee, I have biases. I want to get rid of them, or I want to know what my personal biases are. Great, but most so-called workplace sensitivity training programs, that's not their purpose. Their purpose is to scare you into submission, saying you can't do this, you can't say this, you can't say that, because if you say one thing or another, there's a remote chance that somebody who's eavesdropping on you might mention it to somebody else down the hall, who might mention it to somebody else who might be offended, and suddenly you have committed a cardinal sin, which will get you terminated from your job. So the so-called sensitivity training, or the unconscious bias or subconscious bias awareness training, what have you, whatever they might call it. And Brookstone, which is going down the tubes, by the way, tried to do this to me, and it's one of the things I brought up in my interview with both Mass Resistance and subsequently in the reports that I spoke to the reporters across the country about in the interviews to follow. But basically, you want to, first of all, you want to either ask, what's the purpose of this? Because generally, it's there to make you. It's there to declaw you of any convictions that you may have, which make the world a better place. You don't want too many, because obviously as Christians, we know that if you have a guy who is like plowing another guy, that's going to affect everything else in their life in a bad way, including any children who, if especially say it's a teacher in a government school, they're preaching this as gospel now. Of course, you can't mention Christ because that's anathema. But, you say, well, gee, it really offends me, like I did in 2009, when I became the first person in our modern times that I know of that was fired for faith. You can look it up don't look it up on Google, because it's another discussion, but Google demonizes Americans and demonizes America. It's a very evil organization, Google is. In any event, though, you want to ask, well, why are we having this before even going into it? Because if you go into it, then you're making a decision to rescind. You're making a decision to essentially check your convictions at the door, and we can't have that. They did it at Brookstone. They do it in workplaces across America, and it's really a way of silencing Christians and silencing patriots, and basically it makes for a miserable workplace, because all of a sudden you can't have any discussions with your coworkers about what's really on your mind, and you're setting yourself up for a miserable workplace existence. So refuse to go to these things, and I know there's a risk you might lose your job, but to have a discussion with your employer. And if they force you to go, then start looking for another workplace, and start looking for another workplace really quickly, because you don't want to be in an environment where they're compelling you to accept homosexuality, to accept transsexuals, in the next cubicle over, because that if you're a Christian like I am, you're going to be compelled to say something eventually. And so you want to set yourself up for success. You don't want to set yourself up for a rude awakening where you're going to be told, oh, you said this to this person, and you're suddenly finding yourself in HR, and they're telling you, oh, we got to let you go. So set yourself up for success. Ally yourself with employers who get it, who do not believe in the religion of one man lying with another man, which so many of us are being forced to embrace because we're scared into it by Hollywood, by television. Shows like The Office portraying people who have a problem with these so-called anti-subconscious bias, or whatever they call them, sensitivity training workplaces, as buffoons, like Michael Scott. Millennials love The Office because Michael Scott is such an idiot for clinging to his guns and religion and traditional values, and of course he's just an idiot. Like all sitcom people are portrayed as, especially the father figure, which millennials are desperate for so much. In any event, resist anti-subconscious bias or so-called workplace sensitivity training, and do it. Otherwise, you are agreeing to submit to the evil ethos or or an ethical system which is really antithetical to the heart and soul of America, of Christ, and of what we're all called to do as American men. I am America's Mansman. You can find my blog at americasmansman.wordpress.com. I'm Peter Vidala. I'm also a former fake news anchor, so I get it. I get how these things work, and you want to mount an offensive against this workplace insanity before they mount an offensive on you and fire you as a result, as they fired me from Brookstone. We'll see you later. Thanks so much for tuning in, and thanks for investing the time in these videos, trying to help everyone, including myself, to be a better person, a better citizen, and just be an all-around a good force, and not part of this psychotic weirdness that has gotten a hold of the soul of our nation. Take care now, and thank you.